At an international airport, at dawn when the first rays of sunlight gently touched the earth, the air was still and cool. A man walked into the security area near Gate 37. He did not appear to be anything special. He wasn't wearing expensive clothes or walking with bodyguards around him. If you didn't pay attention, you might think he was just another ordinary passenger, like thousands of others waiting for their flights. That man was Ibrahim Trare, the president of Burkina Faso, a simple, humble yet powerful man, a person who had no intention of drawing attention to himself. His choice of how to travel made one thing clear. True power does not need to be flaunted. It is about genuine connection with the people and facing challenges head-on, wherever they may arise. There was no noise, no complicated procedures, just the calm steps of a regular person walking, except that in his mind, he carried the weight of a nation with all its dreams and ambitions. Just returning from an important meeting in Europe concerning gold, sovereignty, and Africa's future, he only wanted to go home. No rush, just steady steps towards his flight. As he passed the check-in counter, he greeted one of the airport workers with a cheerful, "Bonjour, ça va?" The worker smiled back, unaware that the man in front of him was the leader of an entire country, a person who would go on to shape the history of his country. Ibrahim Trare, president of Burkina Faso, continued to live like an ordinary man, with only a heart full of passion for his country, needing no attention. Ibrahim Traore's flight was meant to be an ordinary trip, but an event was about to occur that would change everything. As he boarded the plane and quietly took his seat in 2A, no one recognized who he was. He had chosen a quiet space, a regular seat in business class, completely indistinguishable from the other passengers. One of the other passengers on this flight was the CEO of a major French energy corporation, a man dressed in luxury, exuding the confidence of someone accustomed to special treatment. His life was intertwined with extravagant parties, private jets, and priority services. But today, when he reached the check-in counter, he was met with rejection. The CEO couldn't tolerate this and immediately started demanding an upgrade to first class, contrary to Ibrahim Traore's composed demeanor, which was a stark display of entitlement and privilege. Not everyone could handle rejection without a trace of irritation, and certainly not everyone could face such a situation while maintaining composure, especially when their ego was challenged. At this point, the tension in the air was palpable. As the CEO continued to insist on his demands, the curious glances of fellow passengers began to shift toward him. Yet Ibrahim Trare, who had no desire to become the center of attention, was still sitting silently, unaffected. This, amid the growing tension, only highlighted his unassuming yet resolute nature. His calmness in the face of such escalating tension became a silent testament to his strength, a stark contrast to the growing restlessness of the CEO. When flight attendant Claire stepped onto the plane to handle the tense situation, she had no idea she was facing a man whose power she couldn't even fathom. With a cold expression and a forced smile, she swiftly entered the business class cabin, her eyes scanning each passenger like a hunter's prey. When she saw Ibrahim Trare, she paused, unable to comprehend why such an ordinary-looking man would be seated in 2A, the business class seat. A man in a hoodie, no expensive watch, no assistant in tow, nothing to signify his importance. Used to controlling situations, Claire didn't hesitate to approach and demand to see his boarding pass. Although the ticket was perfectly valid, she somehow found a reason, no matter how fragile it may be. Ask him to switch to economy class. This was her first encounter with an unyielding yet calm refusal. "No, I will stay here," Ibrahim Trare replied gently, but his words were firm enough to leave Claire flustered. It wasn't just a simple refusal. It was the calmness of his demeanor that threw her off balance, something she was not accustomed to. As she glanced around at the other passengers, Claire could feel their eyes on her, silently observing every action she took. The tension in the air was starting to grow, and Claire, with nowhere else to turn, pushed the issue onto other passengers she thought would be more compliant. But in Ibrahim's mind, he knew this moment was one he could not let slip by. It wasn't just about the seat anymore. It was about the principle of respect and the unwarranted arrogance that had been leveled against him. Despite Claire's pressure-filled demands, Ibrahim Trare remained seated, unshaken. There was no visible anger, no storm of emotion crossing his face, just an eerie calmness of a man who had endured far too many storms in life. His question, "Why me?" hung in the air like a soft slap, but it carried more weight than any angry outburst or harsh rebuke. Claire, who was used to commanding obedience from those she deemed unworthy of standing up to her, now finds herself trapped in a situation she couldn't control. Each word Ibrahim spoke seemed like a declaration not just for his rights, but for all those people who have been treated unjustly. He didn't raise his voice, didn't demand, but his unwavering gaze carried the kind of quiet strength that made Claire pause, forcing her to reconsider her actions. Her usual confidence wavered as she realized her mistake. She had underestimated the power of dignity, and in that moment, it was more powerful than any position of authority. Claire felt a wave of discomfort wash over her. She turned away, trying to hide the growing panic and embarrassment, but inside, she knew that Ibrahim had already won, not through force or fury, but through the self-respect and honor he refused to compromise. A profound message was delivered. No one could look down on Ibrahim Trare, no matter how much power they thought they held. True strength lies in resilience and integrity. After failing to convince Ibrahim Trare to comply, Claire moved on to other passengers in business class, asking them to move to economy. It became clear she was targeting only the passengers of color, making the racial discrimination unmistakably obvious. Her actions began drawing the attention of other passengers, and the atmosphere on the plane grew tense. Ibrahim remained silent, exhibiting no signs of anger, yet his gaze never left the flight attendant's every move. The situation escalated suddenly when a young black passenger, possibly a student or an employee on a business trip, was also asked to move to economy without any legitimate reason. The young man, clearly confused and stunned, didn't know how to react. This was the moment Ibrahim could no longer stay silent. He stood up, not in haste or fury, but with a calm yet strong demeanor. He walked up to the flight attendant. "Stop right now," Ibrahim Trare spoke, his voice not harsh but commanding. "You are acting unjustly. This is racism, and I will not tolerate it." His words cut through the air like a sharp blade, piercing the tension in the cabin. Everyone in the vicinity fell silent as the gravity of the situation became clear to them. Ibrahim's calm but firm stance, filled with authority, turned the atmosphere from unease to palpable defiance. This wasn't just about one man standing up against unfair treatment. It was a broader statement, a challenge to the systems of power that so often ignored the dignity of individuals. And in that moment, Ibrahim Trare didn't just defend himself. He defended the rights of everyone who had been discriminated against, showing that true strength lies in standing up for what's right, no matter the consequences. The atmosphere in the business class cabin had grown increasingly tense as flight attendant Claire continued her unjust actions. She did not stop at Ibrahim Trare, but moved on to another young black passenger, asking him to move to economy without providing any clear reason. What began as a simple mistake soon unfolded into something far more troubling: blatant racial discrimination. Ibrahim Trare, though not visibly angry, stood up with quiet authority. He looked directly at Claire, his voice calm but firm. As he spoke, "Stop, you are being racist. This behavior is unacceptable." The entire business class cabin fell silent, no one daring to speak out. A nearby African nurse, sitting just a few rows away, had recognized Ibrahim and whispered to her companion, "That's our president." That brief comment changed everything. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted dramatically. The passengers, who had been silent observers, suddenly became more attentive, exchanging glances as they waited to see how the situation would unfold. Meanwhile, Claire was left speechless, unable to justify her actions. The calm exterior she maintained began to break down, revealing the confusion and anxiety behind her forced smile. Ibrahim's simple yet powerful intervention had not only called out Claire's discriminatory behavior, but also exposed the underlying racial biases. His quiet strength and unwavering stance became a symbol of resistance. One of those things was forced. Everyone in the cabin to confront the uncomfortable truth of what had just transpired. Claire, despite her professional demeanor, was now facing the full force of the consequences of her actions. As the plane slowly descended into Ouagadougou, The tension inside the cabin remained thick, but everything outside was changing dramatically. On the tarmac, a formidable convoy of military vehicles, including black SUVs and escort cars, had already lined up in anticipation. No one on the plane knew what was happening outside until they looked out the window and saw rows of soldiers standing at attention, their eyes fixed straight ahead, waiting in formal salute. Claire, CEO Marcel Dupont, and the other passengers still hadn't realized the truth that was slowly becoming inevitable. They continued to think this was just an ordinary flight, nothing special. Marcel, with his usual arrogance, stood up confidently, assuming the convoy was meant for him, the important guest. But when he glanced out the window, his expression froze, and a wave of realization hit him like a tidal wave. The truth unfolded slowly, but unmistakably. A military officer, dressed in strict uniform, marched down the aisle with firm, deliberate steps. The sound of his boots echoed on the floor, a sound filled with authority and purpose. He walked straight to seat 2A, where Ibrahim Trare still sat calmly, without a word. There was no sign of anger. When the officer stopped in front of Ibrahim, he raised his hand in a respectful salute. "President Moura, welcome back, sir." The cabin fell silent, as if everyone collectively realized they had just offended the president of Burkina Faso, a man they had misjudged from the very beginning. In that moment, everything on the plane changed. CEO Marcel Dupont's self-assuredness evaporated, replaced by embarrassment and confusion. Ibrahim Trare, in his quiet composure, had delivered a powerful retaliation, not through loud words, but through the silence and authority that filled the cabin. As the vehicle carrying Ibrahim Traore left the airport, the sounds of applause from the people of Burkina Faso echoed in the air, a heartfelt thank you, and a powerful affirmation of their trust in his leadership. Under the first rays of the new morning sun, he stepped into his car, not in a rush, but each step he took seemed to evoke a profound change in the hearts of those watching. It was not just the incident on the plane that mattered. It was the powerful message about personal power and dignity. While Claire and CEO Marcel Dupont were still facing the irreversible consequences of their actions, Ibrahim needed no shouting, no loud declarations of authority. Everything was clear through his actions. "We fight not just for our rights, but for our dignity," he conveyed with every move. Those who had once ignored, who had once placed themselves above others, now had to learn the hard way how to respect even the simplest gestures of decency. The story of Ibrahim Traore would be retold in the years to come, not because of his severity or power, but because of how he showed the world the true strength of patience, self-respect, and the refusal to bow down to oppression. His actions were not loud, but they were profound. Through quiet authority, he demonstrated a leadership that transcended the need for force, and in doing so, redefined the meaning of power. The lesson was clear. True strength comes from standing firm with dignity, even when facing adversity.